brought to our attention by Democrats, the president was here, and that had to do with a. Is there any other Hudson River Park news we should hear about, Connie, since you're here?
Isn't Washington Square Park enough for tonight?
Okay, Washington Square Park. I had the way that I wanted to proceed tonight was to have a resolution that I drafted be the point of both discussion from the floor and then discussion in the committee. And I had intended to have that done before the meeting, and I'd said that it would be online at the board's website. I wanted to bounce off of whatever agreement Councilmember Gerson had reached with the Parks Department, but unfortunately that didn't arrive until not too many hours ago. And so the resolution didn't get prepared in that format. But I'm going to read something. No, I think what I'm going to do first, instead of reading
your resolution.
No. I'm going to let Councilmember Gerson report on where he is at with the Parks Department and what he arrived at. And then I said I would hear a report from the Washington Square Park. No? Okay. We're going to hear from Alan Gerson, and that's going to take a while.
No. I promise you, Mr. Chair. I promise you.
Promises. And then and then I'll get to the resolution. But I want people to actually focus on what Alan has to say.
Okay. In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I will not reiterate the points of the agreement which I reported on at last month's community meeting, but at last month's meeting of this committee. But that is not to understate the significance of those items, especially the guarantees and assurances of important features of the park, which I believe in and of themselves will make this the best Washington Square Park, certainly in my lifetime, especially which has undergone several changes, especially for kids as well as for people of all ages. You have that. The reason for the delay in getting the agreement was blame it on the lawyers. The Parks Department, up until earlier this morning, was having its lawyers review on a line-by-line basis, which I think underscores the significance and credence with which the Parks Department is putting on this agreement. In all fairness to the lawyers, we had holidays, we had other intervening events, so I think the delay was a delay of good faith. What I do want to just touch on, two things. One, some of the modifications since my last report to you. And then I'll conclude by just synopsizing the overall purport and framework. The agreement, again, is essentially, fundamentally, with some legalese added and language tied in what I reported last month. There have been some modifications based on input received at this meeting, at the meeting of a month ago. Specifically, we codified the ongoing role of this community board, assuming the community board so accepts. I never knew community board not to accept an official role in just about anything, but we codified your continuing and ongoing role through a task force which this board may choose to renew or reconstitute, or whatever body of the board this board chooses to assign to deal with Washington Square Park. And specifically, the Parks Department has now a codified, obligation to consult with, receive regular input from the myriad of design details which need to be worked out. And as part of that, we also codified the concern of the community for preserving what has been generally described as the character of informality of the park, a desire not to have a formal, quote-unquote, no offense to Anglophiles, English-style garden, but rather to preserve, the informality, which I think the design, in fact, and I'm not a designer, this is just
Happens to be a good word.
an observation does, but in any event, going forward, that is a goal codified to be worked out with consultation and presumably inclusive of the different community groups who have been involved. We also confirmed and codified that at whatever height we wind up with in terms of the area immediately, the circular area immediately around the fountain, there will be permanent, non-bench, elevated seating areas with trees, with the right angles, which the musicians describe as important to allow for informal musical gatherings. And so that very specifically is preserved in a way that is not dependent on the eventual decision as to the sunkenness or levelness of that fountain, which I'll address more directly. We also have put in place a process to deal with the issues of full access to persons with disabilities. The playground equipment will include state-of-the-art playground equipment to accommodate children with disabilities, and there'll be an ongoing process of consultation with the community of the disabled activists and experts to work out design details. And I can assure you, with the goal of accessibility in mind, and obviously the Parks Department has to meet the law, the federal law, but we're talking about going beyond the law. And that has been a goal of mine in every facet of reconstruction that is going on in Lower Manhattan, in my district. And I can assure that irrespective of whatever has been codified, and we do have this in writing now, that I will work most avidly to make sure that we make this the most accessible park not only ever, but the most accessible park possible as a model for other parks. We did confirm that the
open all the time, huh?
well, the time of closure of the park is a wholly separate issue from the design of the park. It's an issue which this community board addressed years ago, and this community board made the recommendation that it be closed at a certain hour, and this community board has the prerogative to take this issue up again and either reaffirm or change its position. But the issue of closure is legally and factually separate and apart from the design details. It was decided on before there was ever a redesign, discussed, and it can be changed or not irrespective of the design. Just the other two things, I did confirm that there will be an increase in the number of Scrabble or board playing tables in that Scrabble area, and which was important to many folks. And we did, by the way, track down the history of the heart-shaped tulip patch. Several seniors pointed out to me that this used to exist in front of the Holly statue. And when they pointed that out to me, then the light bulb, and I actually can now remember as a kid seeing that tulip patch in front of the Holly statue. So there you have it. The other thing is the agreement is now a joint agreement not only between myself and Parks. I should say the proposed agreement is a proposed joint agreement between my colleague, Councilmember Quinn, and myself with the Parks Department. As you know, my district includes the park and the park community directly on 3 sides of the park. Christine represents the district directly to, Christine Quinn represents the district directly to the west. Directly to the west of the park, and and she obviously will play a significant role in the council with respect to funding, and we have her signature. I'm happy to report to the committee. So other than that, the agreement remains essentially as I reported at the last meeting, and I just want to, because I think there was some misconstruing of the nature of the agreement. This is not an agreement as to a final design plan, a final detailed design plan for Washington Square Park. That is not what this was intended to be. That is not what this purports to be. There are obviously many details that still need to be worked out, and there are many significant concerns which the agreement does not resolve. What this does is three very important things. One is it gives us some ironclad assurances on several very important features of the park. Very important to kids, to concert goers, to seniors, to dog owners, to a range of community. It locks in most of the conditions that were in the original community board resolution, and it adds and locks in additional conditions, including guarantees in terms of against excess amplification, and including democracy assurances that there's sufficient process and public notification to assure the public nature of the park, and absolutely no commercial kiosks, restaurant, vending machines. But here, I promised I wouldn't repeat what I said last month.
You're repeating.
But it locks in, very important features. Secondly, it establishes a framework, and I suggest to you the best, most appropriate, and at this point, community-friendly framework for resolving the 2 or 3 major unresolved issues. And notably, the precise location of the fountain, whether it stays where it is or it's moved a few feet. And let's keep the perspective, wherever we come out on this view. And my personal preference, by the way, would be to keep it where it is. But I've made that clear. Let's keep the perspective on this. If you look through the archway now, down Fifth Avenue, you in fact see a part of the fountain area. It juts out into the center of the archway as you look down Fifth Avenue.
It's artistically beautiful.
I'm just saying. So what the Parks Department is proposing a shift of a few feet. So instead of seeing that extension, you see whatever the number is. I didn't count these. You see the Parks Department is here. You see the fountain. To me, that is an issue. And what this agreement says. It's clear we have, and the last community board resolution accepted that. But it's clear there's several community concerns, including my own. And what this agreement does is establishes a framework for resolving that issue, which will not derail the overall process. What it says is that this issue should be now transferred over to the Arts Commission and, as necessary, the Landmarks Commission. And we've had discussion on that and all the advantages of that at the last meeting. So again, in the interest of time, I won't repeat it. Keep in mind, under the Charter of New York, it cannot be transferred over to the City Council. The Council does not have the authority to legislate a design. Okay, for better or for worse, I cannot do it. So rather than take the chance of losing everything else that we've gained and having nothing done or having... It's not. What we are doing is we are saying an appropriate forum for that level of design is at the Arts Commission and the Landmarks Commission, which has a history, which has a documented history of concern and empathy and sympathy for all of the concerns raised in this discussion here. And this binds the Parks Department to go forward with everything else, even if they don't like the Landmarks or Arts Commission views. Keep in mind, it was with the support of the Landmarks Commission that we got rid of the gates. There will be no gates, by the way, on the fence. So that is the framework that is proposed, Mr. Chair, for resolving the major unresolved design issues. There is one last preliminary step I need to emphasize. Before it even gets to the Art Commission and the Landmarks Commission, there needs to be a release, a full release of all the documents, the plumbing studies, the engineering studies, the financial studies, which the Parks Department has, which according to the Parks Department justifies the need to for an overhaul of the entire fountain area. And we have the Borough Commissioner and his Chief of Staff here, and they could address that in more detail. I'm not their spokesperson, but that will need to be released before anything else is underway, before any commission. And I have made it clear that the council, and actually now Christine Quinn and I have made it clear that the council and I reserve the right to withdraw funding if those documents reflect something other than what they're purported to reflect. So that is, and by the way, you know, me, again, as a layperson, having played in that fountain a few years ago, I won't tell you what I did in the fountain, but I mean, it makes sense to me that after all these years, I don't know, but it's like, Susan, you know.
He was 3.
After all these years, it makes sense to me that it could use a major plumbing overhaul, like we're doing on House Street. But anyway, we will address that issue as a community. And so, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I respectfully recommend to this board that at this time, that we proceed by endorsing the tentative agreement reached by Councilmember Quinn and myself with the Parks Department for both the assurances and of what has been assured and the framework for resolving what is left unresolved, and that this board further articulate its position on those unresolved issues as forcefully as this board is known to do before the Arts and Landmarks Commission. And I think that assures the best possible. I think that, well, that's a legal question. If it's required, I cannot again force. If it's required legally, it'll have to be done. But anyway, and therefore, I conclude my report.
Speak.
Rosemary.
Thank you.
All right.
Very welcome.
What I'm going to, like last time,
What
let's have 10 minutes of questions, if there are 10 minutes of questions for the council member about what he just said. Not comments, questions, okay? Arthur, go ahead. Luther.
Alan, I went to Art Commission where they have 15 sheets of plans for what was done in 1969-70. One of the sheets shows existing conditions. It shows that there's a single water pipe from 5th Avenue to the fountain. It shows there's a single sewer line under it. That whole area was excavated in that work in 69-70. The fountain was lowered. Okay, there is nothing like what was described as being some complicated, leaking old plumbing, you know, that would necessitate ripping up the fountain now. And the two primary principles of that plan, Edgar Taffel and Robert Nichols, said there was nothing complicated about plumbing under it. It's all not more than 35 years old. You know, it was all new then. Look, you were calm. And they have the plans. Why haven't they been able to give them to you?
Well, they are going to have to give them to me.
Why haven't they given them to you?
You have representatives of the Parks Department here. You're going to have to address those questions to them. With this agreement, they will have to give it to me and by extension to the community, and there will be the review. I am not the technical expert, of course, but we know how to get input from the technical experts, and we will, proceed accordingly. I do remember the before and after with 1969, 70. So again, I played in the park, and I remember afterwards we terribly bemoaned the loss of grass and the expansion of concrete. That has nothing to do with the fountain, but there was a lot of criticism with that before and after at that time in that respect. But with respect to the technical issues, what you said is precisely the reason why we need to go forward and have the documents and have the technical review, so we can resolve these issues. We can resolve these issues in a public way, in a transparent way, clearly. You're right.
When are you going to get these documents?
Well, I expect them as soon as this agreement is implemented and we get. It was just reviewed. It'll be before any contract bidding is accepted. It'll be okay. And whether you agree or disagree, it's not too late because it's going to be before. At least if we're going to have a discussion or a disagreement, we should base it on facts. It's not too late because it's going to have to be released to the community before anything is submitted or approved by the Arts or Landmarks Commission, and that has to happen before there's any contractual bidding. So it's not going to be too late, but Luther is right. There's serious questions, and they have to be resolved. The only way to resolve it is with the document.
We have the document.
You don't have all the documents.
I'm going to call on people, all right? You want to say something? Go ahead.
And I think some of those questions, what we have and don't have, should be addressed to the Parks Committee. The Parks Department.
I don't. First of all, can I please? I want to. Commissioner Castro.
Let's see them.
No, in fairness to them, they haven't been hiding. We may agree or disagree, but they've been engaging this community, I believe. And they're here at a late hour, and we should disagree and agree respectfully. Yes, and so we.
Can I ask people?
Many times, listening to you over and over, saying the same thing.
Please stop.
Recording videotape over and over.
Well, you don't have to record it. That's up to you.
But she has the plan.
No, you're not. He's not calling on you. First of all, I didn't realize that Commissioner Castro is here again, and I thank him for being here. I don't know if I'm going to. I don't think you want to be, unless you want to answer questions from the floor. I assume. But I want to thank you for being here again and listening to what's going on. Now, I asked for questions, not argument with Alan. Questions, right?
You can argue with me anytime. Just not.
Show him the plans.
788-7722. You could call him up and argue with him all you want. We have another question.
Yes, ECHO has...
What's ECHO?
ECHO is the Emergency Coalition Organization to Save Washington Square Park. And they've been able to...
There's no microphones.
Okay, ECHO is the Emergency Coalition Organization to Save Washington Square Park. And they've been able to obtain these maps of the water mains. And there's 3 water mains that go from the arch around the fountain. One of them is 48 inches, one's 36 inches, and one's a 20-inch main. And then there's a smaller one that goes to the fountain. And then on the east-west Washington Place that goes right, there's a sewer that goes right through the arch. Through the fountain from Washington Place. And let's see, we have a video to collaborate this.
Okay, I'm not.
We'd like to see the video.
What's your-
All see the videos. Yes.
Do you have a question of Alan?
Would you please turn that on?
Well, I have not seen that yet. I would like to receive a copy. Thank you. And this has to be, the only thing I would just say, and again,
No, please don't turn anything on.
this is the first time seeing this. I will study it. I will look at this in conjunction with other documentation. My understanding is that the representation made, that it's not just the sewer mains, but it's the internal plumbing within the fountain that needs to be dug up. And again, that should be addressed by the department, and that's why we need all the documents, not just part of it. We need all the documents, but this is very helpful, I'm sure.
All right. Any other questions? I'm not calling on you. You've interrupted the meeting. Go ahead.
The question is, as George Malenicus been made aware of all of your proposals and changes, because I understand he was on vacation and had not had a chance to review everything. that was being proposed, and it was somewhat implied as C.
No, I mean, again, and I say this in front of the Parks Department Borough Commissioner, I think George's vacation is one of the reasons why this was protracted, one of many reasons. I negotiated directly with the commissioners. This was signed off and reached with them, and I'm confident that and I know that they have consulted with George, so there's no what if. What is in this written document has been agreed by the highest level of the
I said 10 minutes.
department.
All right, any other questions? Questions of... Questions for Councilmember Gerson? Go ahead.
Well, the Councilman of the Parks Department, what is the basis for, what is the reason for this whole redesigning and rebuilding the park? What is the fundamental reason?
I'm going to... Go ahead. Keep it brief.
Just two reasons that I think the Parks Department can answer more extensively. One is, and I'm glad you asked that, because there's been a little distortion of reality. If you walk through the park on the concrete area, there are cracks, there are potholes, there are dangerous conditions. There are rats. They're throughout just about every asphalt area of every hard surface area of the park. Well, let me just finish. I understand that. So no matter what, even if you were just to repair that, you're talking about a major job, not the minor job that has been misrepresented. But it is normal, and I sit on the Parks Committee, City Council. It is normal and customary and proper and prudent practice that when a department, any department, but including the Parks Department, has to undertake such a major repair job, you always look back at the design and see if you want to make any changes or improvements, because you're not going to have another opportunity. It's a waste of city capital money. You either do it then or you don't do it at all. And therefore, it was proper practice to review the design. And I can tell you, it's been the position of this board and much of the community for years that we wanted more lawn space. We wanted to bring back the pre-teen playground, which I played in, which we lost, which the kids, desperately need in this park, and we wanted to make several other improvements that are codified. There are some controversial features, and that's why we have this framework. Beyond that, I think again, the Parks Department has to.
All right, I'm going to take two more questions because then I want to move on. Okay, 1, 2. Okay.
Not the president, the commissioner.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gerson, I called your office. I wanted to get a list of all the compromises that you made, and they said it's not ready yet. Will it be ready?
He has it. It's here.
I have it, but I only have one copy.
No, Mr. Riley put a whole bunch of.
I gave it out to my committee.
And by the way, I want to thank Mr. James Riley in my office for putting in extra time to make it possible. We didn't have it until today because the lawyers were reviewing. I'm equally frustrated, but the process.
Okay, last question.
I've asked this question
Susan.
before, and I got an incorrect answer. Please don't give me the same answer you gave me before. I was asking about the circumference of the stone seating area that surrounds the plaza. Is it going to be the same, bigger, or smaller? And please do not tell me that the overall seating in the park is going to be increased, because my concern is that plaza, and if you go there now they're in the actually summer vacation, you'll see that there's really nowhere to sit.
The seating will be increased. There'll be more seating in that area. There'll be more seating overall, and there'll be more seating specifically in the area about which you're talking, and that's required.
Okay, excuse me.
That's what I said. We had some modification, raised, permanent, concretized, unmovable seating to preserve the character of the ad hoc performance area with the 90-degree angles and the trees and all that. Okay. I really think some of these questions you should let the commissioner, because I'm not really.
Can we get back to the water?
No, we're not going to get back to the.
I'm sorry. That was out of line.
Do you want to, Commissioner Castro? Do you want to address any of these questions?
Yes. Good evening to everybody. As I understand, the main purpose of the Parks Committee meeting tonight was to consider the resolution that was passed by the board and the previous Parks Committee overwhelmingly in support of the Phase 1 renovation of Washington Square Park, that they saw a need for it, that they approved the Phase 1 with several conditions, that they asked us to continue to work with Councilman Gerson on a number of issues. And the councilman reported back last month on that, and he is again reporting to the resolution that was passed overwhelmingly by the community board, finding it was important to renovate the park, and it had several issues that they wanted us to address, which we feel we have addressed, and the councilman has ably reported back to you. I support what he has said tonight, and I want to add the one issue that came up about the plumbing. The statement that was put out is highly inaccurate, and to the following points. First of all, we never said the plumbing was complicated in the way that's characterized in this document from ECHO. We said it requires a major overhaul because of the leaks and other problems needed to be rebuilt. The comment here that they talk about is extremely misleading to the public and to anyone else who cares to look at it.
Please, Susan, if you want to speak, I'm not going to call on people who disrupt.
We never said that we had to excavate to find the water and sewer mains. We obviously know where they are. We have the plans. We provided them before to any of our designs on how we're going to use them to the Art Commission, and we'll be providing detailed drawings on this. The relocation of the fountain does not interfere in any way with the water and sewer lines. The fountain basin will be at least 20 feet away from the existing water main, not just a couple of feet, as Mr. Harris states in his report. In any case, we are only excavating 1 to 2 feet below grade, and therefore will not come close to the water lines in any case. So we need to excavate and rebuild the fountain, and we will, as we said to Councilman Gerson, provide the information, the conservator's report, and other documents that prove that case. So I want to thank the board. I think we've concluded lengthy negotiations in accord with the wishes and the stated comments in the resolution from the board that was passed overwhelmingly, and we find that it's been a very useful process to consult with the board. There have been unprecedented numbers of meetings. They've been very helpful, working with the councilman, who's been a very fierce protector of the park. We also thank Councilmember Quinn for joining in his agreement with parks. We think it will be very helpful, and I think that as we go through this process, people will feel very, very happy about the renovations that are planned for the park.
Okay, I'm going to take like 4 questions for the Parks Commissioner, because we have a lot of work still to do. Doris, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned Phase 1, and you were planning to start on that. Does Phase 1 still include moving the fountain?
Yes, it does.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Question, not a rant. Question, please.
That your presentation was heartfelt, and I think you're very passionate about your design. And I think we will love the question. So that's a given.
Question.
However, we have different visions, and I want to ask you, do you think it was fair for the community board members who have voted without knowing anything about the arrangement with Tisch, and not knowing anything about certain bypassing the landmarks, by not knowing anything about, not having any physical maps about what's underground? They were uninformed, misinformed, and they were a sin of omission. We all love the park. We want changes. And we have no animosity to you. What we want to do is to do this together in the right way. How many people in this room want to have the fountain?
Excuse me, is that a question of the...
I'm asking this
I'm not...
It's a question. It's a question.
Please have a seat. You're out of order.
How many people don't want here? You don't want the whole room.
Why didn't you the fountain? That question.
Edie, the issue was how to decide. Yes,
So I do have a question for Commissioner Pastor, which is based upon the meetings that you've been to, what you've read, what your own, going out to the park. Do you feel, in your opinion, that the community prefers the center to be sunken the way it is and the existing fence to be the existing 2-foot fence, or do you feel they prefer the proposed redesign that the Parks Department has proposed, which will call for a new fence that's between 3.5 and 4 feet high, as well as filling in the sunken center?
I think that some members of the community are for it, some are against it, and I think that's very important why we have these hearings and why the community board exists to speak for the community. It's spoken overwhelmingly, and it's vote in support of the resolution.
Lane, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank Councilmember Gerson for working so hard for us, and especially for the mounds, which there was overwhelming community support for keeping them. And the last time I spoke to you, Commissioner Casper, you said to me, when I offered you our petitions, no, we don't like them and we're not keeping them. So I'm glad that you aren't keeping them. But I want to ask you, it says they will be rebuilt in a similar form. Does that mean they're going to be renovated in the form they are now? In Crescent Council said they were going to be staying in the same location. It doesn't say that here. What is your intention as to the form of the mounds, where they're going to be located, and when they will actually be renovated and reopened to the public?
Sure.
Because as you know, they've been closed off now.
Right, I do. They will be in virtually the same location. They'll be in a similar form in the sense that we wanted to have safety surface or some kind of soft surface might be poured in place or what have you. And in terms of exactly how they will be designed, we obviously have to do that. We will come back to the board at that time to present the design, since that's not in phase 1. We always come to the board with any designs and they vote. We'll discuss it then. But our intent is to make them so that they are substantial, 3 mounds, that you should feel happy with them. But again, we're going to come to the board, we're going to show you, and you will go through that process.
So the approximate same height of configuration as we are now with the other surface?
Yes.
And that was a clear fundamental intent of the agreement. Every written agreement takes place in that context. And I want to run up and down the mountain place thing in the hill, or no, I don't mean that. But in any event, that's a kid. But that was a major issue, and it's clear there must be 3 mounds, at least as large as they are, and in essentially the same mound area. And that's in addition to the additional 8,000 square foot pre-teen new playground.
Okay,
sorry.
You know what? I'm going to take 2 more, and then we're going to move on. Luther, and am I missing anyone in the back that's raising their hand? Okay. Go ahead.
Phil, I want to know if you're aware of 2 things. One is that when Stanford White cited the arch, he did it in collaboration with Calvert Vaux and Samuel Parsons Jr., and they purposely meant for the arch to be off-center with the fountain. Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, it's proven.
I don't know that.
Well, it's by proven research by Charles Burnbaum.
But what's the point of that?
That should be a very good reason for not moving it.
I disagree.
Those are masked.
All right,
It's a
wait,
good
wait.
reason. The second
Not
thing
arguing.
is, are you aware of a 4-year study that was done by NYU with time-lapse photography of the square, of the performance space, of the crowds, amongst the statues, the plazas, the fountain, proves that everything there works perfectly. That is are you aware of it?
Well, I'm not aware.
It's called drawing a circle in a square.
That is evidence. And what you're proposing, what your design proposes, is speculation.
No, I disagree with
All right, I'm good. You saved me. Luther actually provided for the committee excerpts from that study, and I'm going to pass it out to people. I had one more, and then I'm going to let the commissioner. You're welcome to stay, but I want to move on to the resolution. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are you aware that many people are like me, who are frequent visitors of Manhattan and the Village? What we want when we come here is continuity. In the post 9/11 in New York, there's a lot of things changing quickly. One of the first things we do is we come down here to Washington Square Park and look at that fountain. And it gives us security, comfort, continuity with the staff. that it's there, it's fine. As long as that fountain is there and fine, New York City is there and fine. Are you aware of that? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that wasn't a question. That was a question like they ask in Law and Order. No. We're going to keep moving on. We're going to be out of here. We're going to leave this committee. I'm going to tell you what we're doing the rest of the meeting. All right. I'm going to read a resolution that I'm moving as a move-in. Right. And I voted in favor of the original resolution, so I think under Robert's rules I can make this motion. I'm going to ask then people in the audience can speak to it. I'm going to cut it off at 9:30 because I want this committee to have some time before it gets late into the night to discuss it.
Let him speak.
Just you've given it to us. We can look at it. We can have it. We can. So if someone wanted to present a film before, they should have talked to me about it. I want to get us out of here by 10 o'clock. And so I'm going to read what I wrote. Most of you are going to be very happy. So,
Are we in executive session now?
No, I'm reading a resolution.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
I'm going to ask for comments from the public to it, and then we'll go into our meeting to discuss whether to adopt it, amend it, throw it in the garbage, whatever. Okay?
The Parks Council report that you mentioned.
Yeah, they're not ready yet, so.
May we have the chair's resolution, please?
Okay. Again, this is just my expressing my opinion, and I'll explain. I'll advocate for it for a second afterwards. Whereas CB2 adopted a resolution addressed to the planned renovation of the Washington Square Park, hereafter the plan, on April 21, 2005. And whereas since April 21, 2005, due to the ongoing controversy, City Council member Alan Gerson entered into negotiations with the Parks Department, addressed the proposed modifications of the plan, and has entered into an agreement with the Parks Department which modifies the plan. And whereas with an application for approval of the plan pending at the Arts Commission, the Fine Arts Federation of New York has issued an opinion opposing relocation of the fountain and the demolition of the mounds, and expressing concern with the lack of, quote, historical nostalgia. And whereas there remains considerable community opposition to the plan and antipathy on the part of park users to efforts to change the aesthetic of the park, particularly the raising of the fountain to grade level and surrounding the park with a 4-foot wrought iron fence, it is hereby resolved, 1, that CB2 applauds the efforts of Councilmember Alan Gerson to modify the plan and endorses his proposals except to the extent that CB2 takes a position at variance with his proposal in this resolution. 2, CB2 further applauds the commitment of the Parks Department to continue with the project even if elements of the design are modified by the Arts Commission or the Landmarks Commission, and its willingness to work with the community, elected officials to modify the plan in response to community sentiment. 3, Community Board 2 reaffirms its belief that the park is in disrepair and is in need of major overhaul. 4, CB2 joins the Fine Arts Federation in opposing the moving of the fountain and asks that the Arts Commission take note of the Arts Commission and Landmarks Commission take note of CB2's position. 5, CB2 reconsiders its prior resolution of April 21, 2005 to the extent that A, it opposes the Parks Department plan to raise the area surrounding the fountain. It opposes the placement of a fence around the park any higher than 3 feet above sidewalk level. C, it supports the creation of a preteen play area in addition to the mounds area. 6, CB2 reemphasizes its support for the maintenance of the mounds in the same location, in similar form and design, and the small and large dog runs. 7, CB2 also emphasizes its support for the creation of an ongoing Washington Square Park task force with representatives or designees of CB2, the elected officials in whose district the park is located, individuals designated by those elected officials, the Washington Square Parks Council, and the Washington Square Park Association. CB2, and the requirement that CB2 be consulted in advance on any further namings in the park. CB2 further emphasizes its support for Councilmember Gerson's efforts to preserve accessibility for children and adults with disabilities. 9. CB2 further calls for the expeditious completion of the permit process by the Parks Department so that the construction can begin as soon as possible and the disruption of community use can be held to a minimum amount of time. All right. Now, it's 10 after 9. I'm going to take public comment till 9:30, and that's it. All right? I'm going to ask people to limit their comments to 1 minute. All right? That'll let 20 people speak. Go ahead. You're first. 1 minute.
Arthur, I congratulate you for listening for once to what was. And
You make me very scared that you said that.
They're not planning to be moved for many reasons. If they have to fiddle with it underneath, fiddle with it and then put it back where it is. What I want to say is, Alan, you missed the whole point about this square, and that is the biggest cost in this square is the cost of cement. Cement. The flattening, total flattening of the park necessitates a higher edging and a fence. The park is normally like a landscape area, and if we cut up a little bit more, there are going to be more special areas, but what's left of it should look and feel like a landscape. One of the little small parks, in Lane, that George Collins designed, says the undulations of this small park will cause a walk in a pastoral setting.
10 seconds.
No, it's going to be a parade ground. Don't let them get away with it. Please, Arthur, add that the undulation should stay and the flattening out to parade ground, prison yard flatness should absolutely be resisted.
Time. Next. Gil.
Gil Horowitz, you did not speak for the entire room. There are thousands of people, particularly along the Fifth Avenue, Washington Square area, that want to redesign park, not the park that you envision. Many of us are not thinking about where the fountain goes. Many of us like the fountain moved over to line up with the arch, but if it is decided by the Arts Commission that's not to be, that's not to be. We will live with it. I think you are now at variance in your resolution with the Parks Department Gerson framework, and there's now kind of a wrench in the works as to whether parks will go along with a lower fence, with a redesigned center, or they don't have to listen to you. Parks can go to landmarks and the Art Commission and the City Council and get it passed. We recommend that they go ahead and move with the redesign. It's 40 years. I sat at that table in 1990 when this issue came up. We didn't get a redesign then. It's now 40 years since this park has been redesigned. I lived next to it for 37 years.
10 seconds.
It's in terrible shape. I too want to save our park. I want to save it from the condition it's in now, and to see it redesigned along the lines of the Councilman Gerson Parks Department compromise.
Gil, thank you.
Welcome.
No, I'm going to call some. Who hasn't spoken yet that wants to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I grew up in this neighborhood, and I played in the park as a kid, when I was young. And I remembered the first renovation. And it went over budget, over time. Many kids were gypped out of a place to play. And even Congressman Koch back then couldn't believe some of the mistakes made. All right, they had a pissoir in by the children's playground. That's unsanitary. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that. Okay, and also as for like moving the fountain for aesthetics reasons, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm an electrical engineer and a biomedical engineer. You'd have like corrosion drip. There's 1,000 things I could mention that would go wrong. So I just want to know who are the people that are involved in the design and stuff like that. Where's the money's coming from, and for what? I've heard rumors they want to turn it into like Gramercy like Park. Does that mean if I live 3 blocks away from the park, do I get a key? I like the park to go through to the music, and to meditate, and I don't want my park messed with. I don't care if I'm what you think they have to be, or own it, or whatever. Thank you. That's all I got to say.
I want to hear from people who haven't said anything yet tonight. Anybody left who didn't? in the back, go ahead.
See that accessibility will be kept open to everybody, both children and adults. I would like you to strengthen the wording if you can, because when I spoke to George Veronicas yesterday, it was quite clear that he does not understand ADA requirements. A minor thing such as putting a platform in front of a ramp in front of a gate at the children's playground. He says he doesn't have to do that, and this is the plan going forward. He also told me that he doesn't mind that he is in violation of my civil rights. So I would sincerely like you to strengthen that wording.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Go ahead.
Marjorie, I hear you. We'll work together on that.
But she supports.
Let me get everybody. There's plenty of time.
Can't hear you.
Louder.
My name is Scott. I'm a guitarist. I've been, playing with some musicians in the park for a good 10, 11 years, and it's a blessing. And I guess my respectful hope is that the park stays friendly for musicians to jam and make music on an ad hoc basis, and to use real small amps if necessary. I know that's a touchy question, but we need to do it in order to be heard. So I hope that the rules come out where you can use something real small, battery powered, and be able to make music over the spot.
Okay.
Arthur, I just requested regarding the fence, you reduce that to 30 inches. I passed out a picture of the fence around Tribeca Park. Parks designed it. That 30-inch fence is perfectly adequate to take care of the peripheral plants. It needs to be any higher than that. It's proven successful.
Okay. Go ahead.
Considering the geography, I would like to inquire about a provision for the performance space. I'd like to see that in your whereas.
I think that's in.
If the mounds are mentioned, why is not the performance space? The mounds are not mentioned. I do not hear anything.
All right, I hear you. Want to just to emphasize it. Okay. Ma'am, you in the middle?
Yes. I want to talk about the view from Fifth Avenue through the arch. The only way that you can see the arch, the fountain directly from Fifth Avenue would be to stop traffic and stand in the middle of the street. Anywhere on Fifth Avenue, on Washington Square North, on Washington Square South, on Washington Square East and West. In order to have a direct view through the arch, you have to stop traffic and stand in the middle of the I think the whole subject is ridiculous. I thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for bringing this resolution to the table, and I hope that Community Board 2 really listens and joins the community on this one.
Hi, my name is Michael David, and I'm a singer in the park as well with some of these other guys. A week ago, a couple women from Taiwan had come into the park, and they were on their way supposedly to a restroom at a local watering spot a few blocks away. They heard us playing, they stopped, and they were there 4.5 hours later. Now, they did not go to the bathroom. Literally, they stopped and experienced this magic thing that happens where people gather in the park to connect and to have community with other people in the park who come from Singapore or Brooklyn or wherever it is. And my hope and my desire is, and I agree, the fountain thing I'm not quite getting in terms of why the fountain needs to be lined up, but my hope and my prayer, because Washington Square is a magical place. It's as this woman said, this is the greatest thing that I've seen in Manhattan, and I've been on Fifth Avenue, Uptown, Park Avenue, Bryant Park, and they want it to be there. So whatever happens, I hope that people understand and cherish that. Thank you.
I just want to kind of reiterate what he said. I don't know what's going on with the size of the plaza. Is it the same? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? We don't want it diminished in any way, because what he's talking about is something too intangible to put at risk. So if you make that plaza any smaller, you're going to diminish all of this magic that happens. And there's nothing else in the world that is important as coming together with a diverse group of people. I mean, that's why we live in New York. You know, we're not living here because of rats and noise and high rents. We're living here because we have community here, we have diversity here, we have free expression here, we have spontaneity here. That doesn't go on in anywhere else. So we have to protect that at all costs, and that's where it happens. It's right in that plaza. I don't know who thought of making it smaller, but it's ridiculous, because that's where everybody is.
Okay.
I'd like to say one other thing on when Michael or David spoke about the beautiful times, the wonderful times people can have in Washington Square Park. A lot of people, some people think that we're against changing the park. I mean, fixing the roads, making wheelchair accessible, getting the ramps to look like the one near the arch. A lot of people are all for that. They're all for fixing up the bathrooms and everything like that. But the thing is, if you're doing some changes like for cosmetic things, like moving the arch or something like, moving the fountain, taking the sinking, filling in the sunken area. That's going to, I'm speaking about time now, that's going to deprive people. It's going to take longer to do that for months, and it's going to deprive people, a lot of good people, of some beautiful times, because they're not going to be able to go there and listen to some artists perform and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'll give a lot of weight. Don't make a change unless it's necessary. I mean, that's just...
People come from Asia and come to the park. Everyone here should remember, this is the buzzword of downtown Manhattan now. This park is economic and...
Forgive me for snatching this, but I've been asking for it by email for 3 weeks. Now I have it. I just would like to say, relative to the comment about having these people come from Asia and come to the park, everyone here should remember, this is the buzzword of downtown Manhattan now. This park is an economic engine for the entire community. And when people read guidebooks, not just all over America, but all over the world, they read about this park, they visualize this park and the magic these people are talking about. And I, for one, think it's critically important for the film industry, for the tourism industry, and for all of these other aspects, that it stay as close as it is, as it should be, for the good of the users, for the good of the business community. Yes, it needs to be cleaned. Yes, it needs to be repaired. And I've said these things before. But I would ask that the process, I think, finally is on track to be honest and open. And I think that honestly that the community board is finally hearing, at least in this committee, and I would ask that the process now move forward in the right way, instead of referring to the past when it was closed.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been here a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and I have never, ever heard the reason for moving that fountain once. Ever. No one ever told me, since the 2 or 3 times, whose idea was it, and what's the urgency about moving it? Thank you. It would be nice if someone answered that question.
Doris and then Jonathan.
Yeah, I wanted to bring to your attention the fact that they're still talking about phase 1, and moving the fountain is part of phase 1.
Yes.
So I think you have to address that in your resolution, that not be done until there's a decision on it, and not that they start on phase 1 and move the fountain
There was no
I don't think they're going to start on phase anything until everything's resolved. Jonathan.
First, I want to thank the Parks Committee for basically listening to what has now been thousands of people on petitions. 98% of the people surveyed in the park who do not want to see the Sunken Plaza filled in. The New York Times, the New York Post, thankfully the Villager now, and the Washington Square News. I want to propose one friendly amendment that instead of a fence no more than 3 feet high, that you substitute the existing tubular fence.
Yeah.
Don't tell me we've run out of people to make comments before the time.
I'm sorry, just a comment. Scott Samuels earlier, I personally would prefer not amplified. I agree. But they play them very low, it's a very balanced sound. In the meantime, in the afternoon, you got people bashing on drums, bashing on milk things, hours on end. You can't hear anything anywhere you go in the park. And that's never mentioned as, too noisy. People with boom boxes playing, and, you got to pick on one group, be fair, and eliminate all that.
Okay.
So just pick on the guys.
Last comment, and then we're going to go into executive session. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Matt Gardine from the Washington Square Park Council. I just wanted to, I think most people here were here at the last meeting know this, but we are organizing a workshop which will be run by a group called Project for Public Spaces. It's a local group that helps communities discuss public space. And the purpose of the workshop is to have a constructive dialogue about the future of the park and build consensus around the renovation. So that is, continuing to move forward.
And how does one participate if they want to?
If anybody here who hasn't talked to me before wants to come up to me after, I can give you the details and get your information to send you.
All right. We're going to go into executive session. We're going to sit around this table. It's a public meeting, so people are allowed to listen but not interrupt. Okay? If the committee can sort of... Oh, Al, wait.
Let everyone circle around first.
Okay. So can I get the committee around this table? Ask Alan, I think you're
not to leave. Don't let
an ex-member of every committee, right?
No. They have to be able to hear.
Alan will know.
Last time I didn't get to
I agree.
Don't leave. No.
Can I, Joe, come. Sit. Pull up a chair. Okay, can I ask everybody? Shh. If you're going to stay, excuse me. Folks, if you're going to stay, you have to be quiet, please. Please. Thank you.
Jesse, keep quiet.
We have just one. We're a committee in some form of transition, and it'll continue for a little while. But we have 2 new board members on the committee, right? Who are here? Are they here?
Yeah.
You're here. Okay.
And Judy.
And Judy.
Right here.
Oh, Judy. Okay.
And introduce the other board members.
Many people don't know Maria Durham is the board chair.
She's here. And the other board members are myself and
Richard.
Okay,
so
Richard and I.
5 community board members here.
4 or 5.
Well, if you don't include Maria, you're not on this committee.
No, she's not on. She doesn't count.
I think on every committee, as I recall, can vote ex officio as a member of every.
If she wants to.
All right. And then
if she wants to.
Our public members, we're now right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can the public members just go around, say your name, and just
I didn't
like
know what your question was.
No, he's introducing us.
some of the I haven't met some of the public members. I'm going to look at you at meeting. So can you say who you are, and if you're with some organization in the community that you're, because wasn't involved in appointing anybody. So let's.
Suzanne Dickerson. You have to speak up. Suzanne Dickerson, no particular organization.
Okay. So you're not a public member. Okay, yeah, let's go around. If you're with a group, yeah. Okay.
Oh, Susan Kent.
Are you a public member? I can't hear.
She's board member.
I thought he asked for public members.
Well,
That's why
we'll go around. Full introduction.
Where's Honey?
Appointed by Tony D'Appolito.
Bob Cohen.
Alan Gerson, ex-officio.
Connie Klein, a former member of Community Board 2 and the executive director of the Village Alliance, 18 Fifth Avenue.
Can I ask everybody to please, if you're going to have conversations, to take it outside, please? Go ahead. Finish.
Yes.
Commissioner
Stewart,
Community Board.
Rosemary McGrath, Community Board.
Okay, so now we all know. Now we don't have a test. No. Okay. The first question I want to bring up, because I don't want to not deal with this, is what do we want to do about? How do people think we should handle this Hudson River Park issue?
That's a good call. Can we move to the Washington Square
No,
Park?
to talk about this before we leave.
It's already.
Let's start. Let's move on to Washington Square Park.
Thank you.
I made a motion, basically. That's all it is. So if somebody wants to second it.
I said
discussion, because that's the only way you can have
now,
discussion.
Now there were some proposals made from the floor that I wanted to add in. Excuse me. One was the 30-inch, and I did measure the pipe fences that's around there now is 30 inches.
With the chicken wire?
No, the pipe fence without that's on.
It's 30 inches.
The north side of Washington Square, whatever street that's called. I've only lived here 25 years now. And no, there's no chicken wire. And I guess that was. Yes, Alan.
No, I would.
No, I told Alan he can speak first.
And the good news is after this, I'm going to bid everyone a good night. I trust that you'll.
Promise?
I promise. I have other work to do, believe it or not. No. Arthur, congratulations on your outstanding craftspersonship. And Madam Chair and Arthur, congratulations on a good process. I just want us to put 4 very friendly amendments on the table for consideration, more for clarification than anything else. One is that when you refer to the agreement, it's now not just with me in the parks, but with Councilmember Quinn and myself in the parks. It's important to note that. Secondly, if you agree, which I'm
accepted.
Thank you. Well, you can just debate after I leave, and I can accept it. But secondly, it's important to add a clause, if you so agree, as I believe from your remarks you all do, calling on the council members to maintain funding for the renovation within the current budget, maintain or increase. Keep in mind, the impetus for the agreement from the council's end was the budgetary imperative. That's really the council's only power, official power of this whole process, whether to fund or not to fund. And it's important to send a message to the council, since ultimately I have great influence, that the community wants the funding kept in. I guarantee there's a lot of competition for tight
May I
funds.
ask you a question about this?
You have to
Are you?
ask the chair
No.
if you can ask.
May I
Go ahead,
ask
ask
him
the
a question? Are you
I
talking?
accept that.
Are you talking about 16 million, which would be changing everything, or are you talking about 6 million?
I'm talking about neither. I'm talking about the city council's contribution
I
to the
understand that.
overall, which is less than the $6 billion. You know, it's 2 million and growing, and I preserve and increase. I mean, so we can
Fine,
negotiate.
thank you. So you won't be giving more than 6 million?
Hey, if I could get more than 6 million, actually, to tell you the truth, I have a lot of other parks.
Right, Alan, you have
Third,
two other
yeah.
I like that you make Alan move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, very. But third is, I think you had it, but you read it. Just to clarify and make it clear that you know the role of the Arts Commission and Landmarks Commission, depending. I actually believe some of these changes are going to require going back to the Landmarks Commission. So I think your endorsement that of their role in making the final decisions as to the different issues that will appear before them, and your acknowledgement that Parks and the council member have agreed to maintain funding and support irrespective of their role, and that you believe that is the proper process, that those bodies should have the final word on that. And then finally, and that's important to emphasize that you agree that it should go there. And then finally, if you do that, I understand the legal intent, but I actually think with all of this, there's absolutely nothing inconsistent between what you have written and the framework agreement, because it was just a framework agreement. There's absolutely nothing inconsistent with respect to the process we recommended for resolving those 3 major unresolved issues, and the community board taking a very strong view on where you want the fountain, on the height of the fence, and the fountain area. And so I would not want to give any misperception or misinterpretation, especially with respect to the guarantees we have secured, that we're at odds, and I think we are on the same page. And if you just remove that language, speaks for itself, because it really, I think you said except it's inconsistent, there really is nothing inconsistent, because with respect to the positions which you're proposing, the agreement doesn't mandate a final agreement, it just mandates a process.
All right, okay.
And
you can use a more positive language. Right?
And again, we want to keep what we got with the mounds, with everything else, especially my favorite heart-shaped tulip garden. And I don't want to give them this, I'm only kidding, but I don't want to give them misperception that we're at odds when we're not. Okay. If we were, I would be the first person to say that. And with that, I'd like to be excused for the evening.
No.
That latter point, Mr. Chair, though, is really important. I wouldn't want to give a misimpression that we're in any way.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, congratulations, thank you all committee members.
Alan, don't forget your umbrella.
Oh, thank you.
Way back, I don't know when, April, I was the lone vote against the plan that was presented to us as a committee person. And I remember I quoted Jane Jacobs, and it wasn't printed in the Villager, but it was printed in the Observer. But I would like to say that I consider the editorial in the Villager this week to be superb. It answers all my questions, and it clarifies the position, and I would like to congratulate the Villager. And I would also like to say, I know someone like Judy is concerned about rats and the mounds. And having jogged, by the way, I've only lived in the village for 53 years. And I've lived in where I live now for 46, which is 2 blocks from the park. But as far as the mounds, I know Judy's worried about that, and rightly so, with rats. But there's a problem with rats all over that park. So we have to do something about the rats in the park. I was saying before, and everybody thinks I was kidding, I jog around there until lately. I'm an old grandmother now, of a grandson in college, 2nd year. And I said years ago, I saw 2 rats dancing. They probably were mating, but they were on the sidewalk and they go into the trees, etc. So when we fix up the mounds and fix up the park, not change anything. I don't want the fountain changed. I would like the fence lowered to about 30 inches. I don't know where Luther is. Is he still here?
No.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The way it is now, the pipe. But I would like to see a greater effort to get the rats. They're not only in the mountains, they're in every part of that park. I see them coming out of the trees at night.
Okay, anyone else?
Just to make sure, I mean, this is a minor detail that the changing tables in bathrooms, male and female, not to be sexist and just put it on the female side as tradition is, to make sure that it's the male and female.
Oh, so you mean
It's really,
the
really
original
important. And that would be, did you hear that? Bill still here?
That was part of the original
Yes.
plan.
This map came from a man named George Alloy, and he's a subsurface utilities designer with 35 years of experience. So if I could just read it for you. He said that the 9-foot reduction of the fountain is close enough to undermine or disturb the water mains. In moving the fountain, the problems that may ensue could cause a water main break that would greatly prolong the construction time needed to complete the project. If it's necessary to replace the pipes, because it has to be done in phases, it could add many months to the project. Moving the fountain 23 feet east would place the fountain basin within a couple feet of the water main manhole covers. George Villanicus recently stated a new fountain is needed to keep it from sinking anymore. Upon close inspection, there appears to be no structural damage to the fountain. But there does need to be more catch basins and drainage connections to the existing sewers, which would alleviate any drainage problems with the water sitting in the plaza area after a heavy rainfall. So, of course, that does not require moving a fountain. What clogs the catch basins are leaves and garbage and lack of proper maintenance. There's no place for the water to drain, as there's only 2 or 3 catch basins leading to the drainage system in the plaza area. So Mr. Alloy said that there's no engineering reason for moving the fountain, but a good reason not to. And we have, a little video.
Okay, but maybe at the end, if you want to show it to people, I just want to give anyone who wants to.
May I just add a PS to what I said?
Oh, go ahead. You have enough.
Both my children went to St. Joseph's Academy right across from the park. In fact, my daughter was in the last graduating class. So my son played guitar in the park. And my son is almost 50 years old, and I'm trying to say to you that both my children, one who'll be 46 and one who'll be 50, would, when I told them about it, were absolutely appalled that we would be changing the park as their mother is. And I cannot congratulate Arthur Schwartz enough for what he's done tonight.
Yes. Bravo.
Just to be clear about the fence, could we request that either the pipe rail fence be retained, or if that is not possible, to go with Luther's suggestion that the fence not be any higher? In other words,
I accepted that.
So it's either
did
one.
Did people see this?
No, can you pass that around?
Here, I've got one. This is an interesting.
Well, I didn't know if you said possibly keeping the pipe rail fence as Jonathan proposed, or see. I mean, personally, I'm happy with the pipe rail fence, but if they will,
Any other?
One more comment?
As many. Go ahead.
That moving of the fountain, it's for aesthetics and for photo shoots. And now that the World Trade Center is not there in line with Fifth Avenue, which was a beautiful thing to see, I'm against moving the fountain, and I understand why New York City and the mayor and Benefit and so on would like to move it over so that it would be really in line with the fountain for pictures.
Thank you for sitting next to me.
Now, personally, I'd like to see the Statue of Liberty moved in the Hudson River along the line of Bleecker Street, so that my people, where we live in our neighborhood, we can see the Statue of Liberty.
Anybody else want to say anything?
I'd like to move that we vote on the question.
What's the question?
It's Arthur's resolution.
I seconded it when we first. close our discussion.
Which,
Is there
from
any
what
other-
I understand, includes that you accept the fence to be 30 inches of the
Right.
pipe rail, okay?
Well,
No, I just said, just 30 inches.
Just 30 inches, yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Right.
I have a question. It's just procedural. If this resolution passes and then passes at the regular community board meeting, does that, if it passes, then it supersedes the previous resolution,
Yes.
right? If it does not pass, does it mean that the previous resolution stays in place? Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So nothing's wiped out at all. It's just that I see.
Do you have to vote
No.
first to rescind the other one?
No. When you have a new motion on the floor, that automatically.
Okay. Go ahead. You want to say? Yeah, I want to make sure everybody
I
gets
heard
to say.
everybody else.
You're not shy.
I feel that a fence, the important thing about a fence, isn't that it be 4 feet high or 3 feet high, but that it be open, so that, I don't want a solid fence. I want a fence that's open so that you could see the grass and so
Right.
through the fence. And that's what I'm most interested about. As far as the height of the fence, I have no problem with Alan's agreement with the park department, about a 4-foot fence. They initially wanted a larger fence. He pushed it down to 4 foot, 3 foot. To me, it doesn't matter that much to me, but it might be, I don't really see the difference 4 feet, 3 feet.
Arthur, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, honey.
And when you talk about, would you accept to say that we urge the landmarks and the art commission to move expeditiously? We've already lost a lot of time before we know it.
Yep.
I'm already hanging holiday decorations.
I agree.
It's going to be spring. So if you please add to have them move as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I call the question.
Can I just
Could you put that in about the...
Yes, open. And I want everybody to understand that I made this resolution because the continuing controversy and the opposition, and I do think has the potential to slow the plan down. As people who've worked with me over the years on Hudson River Park know, like, the opposition to the plan resulted in years and years and years, and maybe 4 years of delay in building segment 4. No, but segment 4 itself, the plans were there, and then it took like an extra 4 years because...
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tony Dalmatido Recreation Center is now closed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tony Dalmatido Recreation Center is now closed.
Because Jerry Nadler asked for a study on whether or not there needed to be an EIS, and that study took almost 2 years, and it held up everything. And then there was another, and there were enough controversies caused by continuing opposition that it just got delayed. And I don't want to see this delayed. I want this to be on path by next spring, which is I think when they're planning on starting it, to really all be set and have it done, and then have it move as quickly as possible. All right. So that being said,
I'm going to second that, Arthur. And I also want to bring up...
What are you seconding?
Seconding what he just said.
Let's move, Bob.
What he just said. But I think there's another element here. There are people in our committee who are part of a lawsuit to stop the Parks Department from doing anything.
Well, that was
no lawsuit. Right now, there's no lawsuit pending about anything because there's no final plan. Okay. Question is, anybody opposed to calling the question?
No.
Okay. Board members, all in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your hands. 30. Okay, so that's all of us.
Oh, right.
You voting or not voting? You voting? Okay. So that's, and public members, of which there is 1, 2, 3, 4,
7
5,
or
6,
8.
8 is 8 of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 all in favor? Unanimous?
Yes. Good.
Okay. What?
Edie, I don't have to talk to you anymore.
We'll go to the board, and we'll,
I'm
hopefully,
kidding.
I don't know if it's holidays, maybe in November, but sometime we'll get back to it.
Thank you, Judy, for voting, and I'm glad you're on the Parks Committee. I think these people
It was unanimous, everyone, both the board
my lone vote in April.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe we'll just ask a couple people.